So your identity is the part or the construct of how you see yourself, and what everything else is now stacked upon that to, I guess, help you show up in the world in that domain. So my identity is going to have a set of paradigms, attitudes, beliefs about myself and the world around me. I'm going to have behaviors, habits, actions that also get stacked on top of that then creates my performance in my world. So that's useful, because if you're someone who's trying to change parts of the way that you show up in the world, trying to set a goal of losing weight, but if we don't change how we describe ourselves, like I'm a fat guy trying to lose weight, we were talking about that before. If we don't change that statement, we're gonna have a very hard time getting behaviors, actions, new skills stacked on top of what's at the very core a rotten part of the entire holistic part of change. So I indexed early on when I started getting into this world of like inner game and mental game and helping athletes with performance, going, oh wait, if I can help shift someone's identity, like shift the way that they see themselves, then that's going to change. The other thing that really helped was what we were just talking about, that when I could start separating out people's identities for them, it became far more easy, and it was a lot more useful to the client to go, oh yeah, I'm fixing or I'm shifting or I'm transforming this part of me. And I'm going to keep these parts of me off the court, off the field, off the ice, and not let some of these other things interfere with my performance out there. And we can talk about that because there's some very specific things that would get in the way, in the future.
Yeah, well, that makes so much sense to me now in retrospect after I read your book.
Yeah.
Because before I was under the belief that, oh, I have to change. I understood on the underlying fact that I have to change my identity in order to make consistent change in my life. Mm-hmm. But I was under the impression that changing the identity was a function of habits, of a lot of these little things you do every day.
Yeah.
And that felt overwhelming to me, is that we have to chip away at this thing, like Michelangelo chipping away at the David to figure out who I truly am.
Yeah.
But your model is very different. You're creating this alter ego, you're embodying them, and then over time, you can meld those together if you choose to. And to me, that is an arbiter of dramatically faster and more effective change, at least in my life and a lot of the people that I've studied. I'm interested how you sort of came to that realization. Obviously, we talked a little bit about that with your journey, but what crystallized that when you were coaching or when you were working with these athletes?
Yeah, so, well, actually, to your point about chipping away at it, the way that I view it is like, they're both useful, right? I mean, one of the worst things about social media now and the self-help world is that they've made people believe that everything is a belief issue. Like, no, you got to change your belief about yourself. And in my world, like, listen, I've been playing at the very top of the mental game world now for a long time. The last place I want to make an issue for someone is their beliefs. Because sometimes, you know what? You just need a different tool. You're not terrible at driving the ball. You've got literally the wrong flex in the shaft of your club. It's a tool issue, or it's a tactic issue, or something like that. So you can definitely use both. But for me and the world that I became known for as being like a kind of a quick hit artist, like I can come in when someone's challenged or stuck or struggling, I can shift things quickly, and that's because I was going to shift their identity. So how did I kind of discover that identity stuff and alter ego? Well, it was, again, accidental in some ways. I stayed very close to my creative imagination when I was an athlete. And a lot of the best things I think in life are born out of necessity, like need, even for people who invent something. And I was a kid who had the goal of being the first ever Heisman Trophy winner that was Canadian, going into the NCAA. Well, that did not happen. Easy end to that story. But I was a really good football player in my area, got some scholarships. But on the field, I was 6 feet and 159 pounds in high school. There's just nothing I could not consume enough calories to gain weight. I just had this insane metabolism, which I wish stayed with me, now in some later years. But I had this insecurity of being too small out there. Well, but my desire was bigger than my insecurity. And so what happens is we all do this. I used my mental faculties or my creative imagination to invent something for myself. And for me, that was an alter ego. And so I invented Geronimo. And Geronimo was the composite of my two favorite football players in the NFL, Walter Payton and Ronnie Lott, and a tribe of Native American warriors, 5 guys in particular, and led by Geronimo. And then in the locker room, I would go through this visualization process, which maybe we'll wait and we'll kind of unpack that in a little bit. But I used Geronimo to play out on that football field. And then when I started my business, now fast forward 5 or 6 years when I started my business, here I am, I'm 21, I look like I'm 12, I don't have 4 best-selling books and I don't have a bunch of letters behind my name, but I'm good at apparently teaching young kids about the mental game, which again, me starting this business, completely accidental. I was volunteering at a high school, coaching the defensive backs. Parents started asking me if I could mentor their sons and daughters because I seemed to be getting them results, not just on the field, but in the classroom as well, because I was talking to them more about their mental game and giving them some strategies that they could use to, perform better. And voila, the peak athlete was born. But I'm not making the phone calls. I'm not dialing people up like I'm supposed to grow this business because I'm wholly insecure about doing that. I hated rejection. So I invented Super Richard. And Super Richard was the guy who was custom built to make phone calls and be the promoter of Todd's stuff, which we'll get to in a little bit, because even that languaging, being the promoter of Todd's stuff, gets into what I talk about in the book, the importance of the origin story or the mission of your identity. So here I am, I'm now working with athletes, I'm growing, this business starts to get some attention. I'm now working with higher caliber athletes in the early 2000s. A lot of times because of my mentor started sending me clients that were professional, because he was known as the Yoda of baseball, Harvey Dorfman, worked with some of the biggest names in Major League Baseball. And as I'm talking to these people, they're talking about all of a sudden, oh, I have this identity that I step into, or I have this alter ego, or I have this character, like all these different words that they would use. And in the beginning, I'd be like, oh my God, I did the exact same thing. It's not cluing in yet that this is an actual device that the best of the best are using to perform consistently above the average. And then one day it was just this one woman that I was helping with preparing her for the Athens Games, the 2004 Olympic Games, but this was a year earlier, where just the way that she mentioned her alter ego, I was like, oh wait, no, this is an actual thing. So then I went back and interviewed old clients and talked to existing clients. And that's how I started to build out this sort of methodology of building an alter ego specifically created to help you win on that field of play.